Hi, everyone. I'm David. Today we'll be talking about how Splunk is evolving our FinOps practice. So without further ado, we're just going to get into Splunking into the world of cloud cost data. So I'm a FinOps practitioner on the Splunk team, and Splunk is a part of Cisco, so part of a big family there. And my role is FinOps practitioner, FinOps engineer, kind of in between both. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Splunk before we talk about our FinOps practice so you can understand more of our value proposition for our customers. So at Splunk, we believe that digital resilience is a team effort. Our value proposition for our customers is to build a safer and more resilient digital world. We do that by making your data easier to query, and by doing that, we can federate all of your data from multiple sources into one platform so you can find the gaps and resolve them very quickly. And that allows you to keep your systems up and running and making sure that everything that you have in your environment is running securely and is with good observability. So Splunk Enterprise is the portion of Splunk that is hosted on your infra, and Splunk Cloud is our offering, or we host the infrastructure on the cloud and we take care of the maintenance and everything for you. So you don't have to manage all of the different components for your Splunk deployment. So that's the advantage of having it in the cloud. There are some disadvantages. You have less control over certain aspects of that. But when we talk about Splunk, there is like the traditional Splunk deployment, which would be hosted on your own resources, and then Splunk Cloud, which is again hosted in our cloud environment, and we handle all of the maintenance for you. So you do get the full capabilities of Splunk Enterprise, get the flexibility of the cloud. We provide dedicated environments, so multiple, like the different use cases that some of our customers have with more stringent requirements, we can meet those. So sensitive data and different type of environments like our GovCloud accounts and FedRAMP environments, all of that is well protected in the cloud. So now that we've talked a little bit about Splunk, I'd like to tell you more about how we're doing FinOps at Splunk. Here's a bit of a timeline about our journey. So we were founded in 2003, went public in 2012, and then in 2020, between 2020 and 2022, like our cloud growth took off, and that's what you can see on the graph on the right. So you'll notice like in year 0, 2020, between 2020 and current year, like we've grown 46%. So it took off across all three clouds: AWS, Azure, GCP. So I'm gonna like structure today's content around like some phases you might be familiar with, the FinOps phases. For anyone that's not familiar with the FinOps phases, what those are is inform, the optimize, and the operate. When we talk about the inform phase, our objective there is to give our stakeholders visibility into their cloud cost spend. We want to empower teams to take ownership and to make decisions with the proper data that they need to make those decisions. And we don't like siloed data, right? So we want to bring everything into one source. So we have one source of truth. For the optimize phase, we're concerned about ensuring that we're paying the best, that rate optimization, that we're not paying more than we should be for our resources, that the resources deployed are the proper size for the requirements of your application or service or one of our microservices, and that overall we're negotiating good discounts. And then in the operate phase, related to the governance, the compliance, making sure that we have accountability and in the organizational perspective of FinOps, like how are we doing with that side of the equation? So first I'll go to the inform phase. So the main problem we had as it relates to the inform phase is that our cloud costs were siloed into different areas, right? So if you have, maybe we were in a very ad hoc space. So if you needed a cost report, we would maybe extract that data from Cost Explorer, write an Athena query, do something to pull that data for you. If it's in a different CSP like Azure or GCP, we're doing similar process there, exporting it into some Google Sheet or Excel file or maybe a temporary dashboard, but nothing dynamic, and it certainly wasn't in one central platform. That's where we actually utilize Flexera. So we centralized our cloud cost data in Flexera, which allowed us to pull costs from AWS, GCP, Azure, all into one platform. And that also allowed and enabled us to grant access to that platform to various stakeholders so they could also take part and build their own dashboards and view the reports that we built for them there as well. Another problem that we had is we didn't have a centralized FinOps tooling platform. So our solution there was to develop a platform that we could use to host our different solutions for KPIs, for some of the internal services that we've built in FinOps, we'll get to some of those later on, and also for automated cloud cost reporting. So we'll talk about that a bit in the next slide, but we were able to use Flexera not only to actually host the dashboard, but also to manage notification service that leverages Slack and like a org registry that we maintain. So that way we can actually get closer to our stakeholders and bring that content to them. And it's not like in an email, you're getting a notification. So I'll actually show you a bit about what that looks like. So on the left, there's like a ERD, but the most important part is like that org registry you see at the top left. It's a table that actually holds our metadata about who owns what microservice, everything, like their Slack channels, like just anything that we need to effectively communicate. And the reason this is important is because an org chart, it will show who you roll up to, who you report to, but oftentimes there's like cross functionality with management of microservices, and we felt it was important for us to maintain a source of truth in that hierarchy, and we can totally customize it. So when we do our reporting, it looks like what you see on the right, and we have various levels. We have like the microservice level, the microservice manager level, the director who might have multiple microservices, and then the VP who will have multiple directors. And on the, as you can see, that's a Slack notification. The user would be able to view their total spend along with a month over month change for that spend. And I'll back up a little bit. What we're looking at is an example of a service level report. So this is something that the service team would receive, but it's a similar format for our directors and for our VP reports. And the user can actually drill down. They can click that hyperlink and be directed to a Flexera dashboard. That dashboard is just much more interactive than this report here. And the last part I'll say is that the dashboards are also managed via codes. Flexera is very flexible in that sense. So we were able to leverage the API. So if a user went to the dashboard and made a change, the next day when our backend runs, it's going to refresh and make sure that the dashboard is configured the way it should be. So next, that takes us to the optimize phase. So here, we had several problems. We were putting fires out reactively, not necessarily like being proactive and getting ahead of the curve. So we were optimizing for rates as someone would talk to us and say, hey, we're spending too much in on-demand. There wasn't a process in place or strategy in place for optimization. We also didn't present the base level KPIs in ways that matter to Splunk. So like production, non-prod, business units and scopes in Splunk, we wanted to present those KPIs in a way where we could go to our BUs and inform them, hey, this is your coverage rate, this is your utilization rate. And naturally that led to us building some recommendation tooling as well for like savings plan optimization and RIs. And we also, since Splunk Cloud is a product that we offer customers, in a sense, we're like a CSP ourselves. So it's important to track a cost of goods sold to ensure that we're accounting for everything that goes into that value chain for the customer. So we needed a way to track events that were occurring in our cloud environment that would impact our margins. So that was very important to our finance team. Some of the solutions that we deployed in acknowledgement of these problems was developing rate optimization strategies that are aligned, again, with the scopes and BUs that are important to Splunk. We focused on publishing those KPIs out to the different BUs and using them to keep track of our various coverage targets and help using those tools to guide us instead of being reactive. And we also automated the cloud environment, what we call our CGM, Cloud Gross Margin Monitoring. That is the impact monitoring section here. And that's how we interface with all of our product owners that are managing initiatives that impact those margins. So that helps inform the forecast for our finance group. So, over like the span of a quarter, if we have a work stream, like a cloud gross margin work stream that maybe is failing, we'll receive notifications weekly so we can begin to intervene a little bit sooner. So here's a look at one of the dashboards that we built using our tooling. This is actually a Splunk dashboard. So this is a KPI, a savings plan KPI dashboard. It shows us our coverage metrics. At the bottom, you start to see like some cost optimization opportunities that align with like our strategy. On the next slide here, this is what a notification for that cloud gross margin tool I mentioned looks like. It's also distributed via Slack. We found that most people engage with Slack higher rate than they ever would with email. And for this example work stream, that summary just informs the workstream owner of, okay, here is your target or your estimated savings, here are your actual savings compared to that estimated savings. So just a bit of a glimpse at how that looks and how we're using our tooling to like manage impacts to the cloud. And for the last phase, for our operate phase, some of the problems we had was tagging compliance was inconsistent. Not many people in the organization were aware of like FinOps, what FinOps does, what value it brings. We're working on a community of practice, community excellence, whatever you want to call it, just that group that has ambassadors in different areas in the company that can help remove some of the red tape and make changes faster. So some of the solutions that we're employing is, yes, focusing on a community of practice. So that way we are working with the other personas across Splunk. We implemented some governance frameworks. So like a CTFR, so that everything from the infrastructure as code perspective is handled through our centralized Terraform repository. So we can have greater control over what's being deployed into the cloud and make sure that it's adhering to our guidelines. And so we're trying to set up guardrails, governance guardrails. And again, the organizational registry supports that effort. So we can understand who owns what, where they are. And then lastly, we're still developing some automated anomaly detection and assignment capabilities. So we can begin to let the engineering teams take ownership of their own anomalies and assign those anomalies automatically through a ticketing system like Jira. So that's a bit about our operate phase and some of the solutions that we're employing to resolve these problems that we're having. And next, what we're focusing on is unit cost. We're looking at a top-down and a bottom-up approach to ensure that we can, provide unit costs for the microservices. And then also, like at the very high level, we can maybe show a unit cost for Splunk as a whole. So that's on our roadmap for this current fiscal year and maybe into next fiscal year. For KPIs, we'd like to incorporate some type of alerting. So if a threshold is breached, we can take action faster, and that reduces tech debt and toil on our end from going to find these opportunities. We can just have a Jira ticket created if something is outside of a certain threshold or a certain range. We're working on forecasting. So we're working very closely with finance to develop a more advanced forecasting model that gives us less variance in our current forecasting. And we're also working on our capacity planning to like build relationships with the CSPs so that we can plan for the capacity that we think we'll need over like the next 2 years or so to say, okay, here's the instance types we think we need, here's how much we think we'll need, and we can coordinate our purchasing and move more toward like a proactive approach with our FinOps practice. So yeah, that's a bit about how Splunk is handling FinOps at this point. I think Colin and I are going to have like a fireside chat, and we can also like answer any questions or just kind of have a casual discussion.
So my name's Colin Jack. I'm a principal FinOps advisor at Flexera, working with our customers so they can maximize the value of the product. David, that was a great presentation.
Thanks.
How many people do you have on your FinOps team?
6, not including manager. We're actually hiring for a manager right now. So,
and this is just Splunk, right? This is not kind of greater Cisco.
This is only the Splunk team. Yeah. So we have 3 engineers and 3 FinOps practitioners.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are your engineers the ones who are kind of building out those tool sets for you? And
yeah, that's right. So the practitioners like source the requirements and understand like the business side, and then the engineers, yes, they're building like the tooling that we're building the foundation for the tooling. Some of the practitioners will also hop in and do some engineering work, but like the entire backbone of our engineering platform is built by the engineers.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does the tool stack look like that you're working with? You mentioned obviously Flexera in there.
Yeah.
But, everyone we know is using at least 4.3 tools. You know, what else do you have there?
Well, we're deployed in Kubernetes, so we host our solutions there, and then we use like Prometheus for like alerting. A lot of different, like we'll have some DynamoDB databases, just kind of like what you need to, build a platform to like for the notification service. It's mostly like Python based, but you have for the infra part, it's like Kubernetes, DynamoDB, like API gateway, pretty simple stuff.
And as we saw, you're using Splunk there as well.
Yes, yeah. So
charting.
That was and using Splunk was helpful too because everyone at Splunk, or most of them, know SPL or Splunk processing language, so they can go to that dashboard and actually export it into a different instance and start to wrangle the data more if they want using SPL. It also helped because we didn't have to acquire licenses for something like Power BI or something else where it didn't quite fit the use case that Flexera solves for us with like the cost dashboarding, just more like different edge cases. We might need to build a custom report for like on-demand capacity reservations. Like if we want to see who's spinning those up and kind of keep track of that, we can build that report in Splunk and then share that dashboard. Mm-hmm. And anyone in Splunk is pretty familiar with how to use it. And so, yeah, we just felt like they'd be more comfortable on that platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned KPIs, and you also mentioned in the future you're going to be doing KPIs, more KPIs.
Yeah.
Has there been one KPI that's really made a difference for you? And a real game changer? Either ones you've implemented now or maybe ones that you think is going to make a big change in the future?
That's a good question. I think the ones that we've implemented now made a pretty big difference. Like the savings plan coverage and utilization, like the very basic rate optimization KPIs, they made a big difference once we began to look at them through like the lens of Splunk and like what's your coverage and utilization. It allowed us to start to gamify things a bit. And those KPIs kind of were like a gateway to more recommendation tooling that we built. So we realized, well, we're telling them what their coverage is. Maybe we can build some recommendations and even like calculate an hourly commitment to hit like our specific coverage target. So we started to, with the KPIs, naturally, you also have targets. Mm-hmm. And so toward that effort, for example, with EC2, we knew our coverage target is 95%. We primarily use instant savings plan for production spend. We know that accounts can share those instant savings plans as long as they're using the same instance family and are operating in the same region. So that's how we orient like our purchasing. It's not by account, it's by instance family and region for prod spend. And then for non-prod, we'll use compute savings plans mostly, and that's shareable with any kind of compute usage. So I would say the traditional KPIs became much more like the coverage and utilization became more impactful once we, again, like displayed them through the lens of areas of importance to Splunk.
Okay. With you mentioned gamification of anomalies as well. How do you motivate the engineers to look at those, and how do you gamify it?
We're still in the process of like actually pushing the ownership of a certain anomaly back to an engineer. Right now, we're still in a manual process where our anomalies are like exported into a sheet, and we just manually are looking through to see what anomalies are important. And
so you're doing like a first pass on it, and then
yeah,
give them to your.
I think in an ideal state, we could leverage something like the cost reporter for AWS, like a cost reporter. We're still kind of figuring out what that final solution looks like. That's on our roadmap, but we want to have a solution where we will put a ticket on the Jira project for the team that's responsible. We want to use the org registry to hold more of that data, so we can know what team maps to a certain account or a tag value and what's their Jira board, so we can distribute that notification to them.
And then how do you gamify that? Do you have like a leaderboard that you publish, or?
We wanted to release another KPI that would be like mean time to resolution for anomalies, and then kind of rank teams based on how quickly they respond to anomalies. So that's like our initial approach to gamifying it for the anomaly portion. And then it's a different topic, but for unit cost, we want to also add the unit cost into that report that you saw in Slack. So underneath like their spend, you'll also have the unit cost for that microservice and a month-over-month change. It's very visible. I mean, everyone sees the same Slack notifications, and it's started a lot of good conversations, and it's just like a natural gamification because we're not calling anyone out for the spend. It just rolls all the way up to the VP. So VP, I mean, those conversations start naturally. I mean, the first month after releasing that, and again, that was coming from that's how we wanted to start gamifying things. We had so many Flexera access requests because people were trying to click on the dashboard and go view these reports, and it was starting conversations, or we got requests to purchase savings plans, or so it started a lot of good conversations. So when we gamify anomalies, I think it would be like a solution that is leveraging something like, the Slack notification, or just being totally objective about it. It's like, these are the numbers. We didn't like just reach out to your manager and say, you're not doing this. We just kind of have a scorecard about who's resolving their anomaly faster, and, who has better unit cost metrics. So
at the end of the day, that's the data, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in really quickly here because we have a question that kind of ties to that. And you sort of answered it a little bit, but you talked about, FinOps notifications through Slack. So how did you come up with that idea? Sounds like you said a little bit about that. And what was the process like to set that up? Sorry for interrupting, but...
All good.
So our principal engineer, Andy, he actually, I think a few years ago, he was at a MetLife FinOps event, and they had a similar idea for the registry, because we were kind of grappling with like, how can we have a data store that contains contextual data about our organization and then map that against notifications. And there's a very simple setup, like we're just using YAML files that hold information about each director, senior director. We collect like their email, their Slack channel, their name, and then we put those YAML files into log data and push it into Skynet. Well, our internal instance of Splunk is called Skynet, but we push the data there, and then it's queryable, and we essentially map it over like, now how it interacts with Slack is we have like an internal service that leverages the Slack API. And then we're talking to the registry to get Slack channel information. We're talking to Flexera to get cost data. We use the Flexera rule-based dimensions to kind of resolve like tagging issue, which is very helpful because at least if the resources aren't tagged, but we know, okay, these 4 accounts equals this microservice, then we can use our Flexera rule-based dimension, at least allocate that spend while we eventually get that team to actually tag the resources. So I guess in summary, yeah, with Slack, the Slack notifications and registry is a core component. The Flexera API is very important, and so are the rule-based dimensions that allowed us to just group anything we wanted to, and then attach to that grouping however we wanted to using the rule-based dimension. So
Give you that business context on those cloud costs.
yeah. And then if they're in the dashboard, the dimension is just the rule-based dimension is a dimension on the dashboard, so it makes sense to them to like they don't have to click the 4 accounts to look at that spend. They can just say, oh, this is my service, and so it made it really user friendly. And then again, I mentioned this earlier, but we're controlling the dashboards via code. So that service runs daily. So if someone makes a change and they go into the dashboard and select like an additional dimension or delete something, once our service runs, it's going to refresh. And so we have some quality control there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've got a lot more questions, Nancy. Are there other questions from the audience? Or I can, why don't we take
There are. Sorry.
Why don't we take a few of those?
So where are you finding the most opportunity across Splunk, and what are the blockers to realize those opportunities? Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a really good question. The most opportunities have been like the low-hanging fruit recently. I mean, once we developed like the rate optimization strategies, it became so much easier to spot on-demand spend that wasn't within our target range. Now, some of the blockers to that is that our strategy for prod spend is to buy an ISP. So we really have to make sure that team is going to use that instance type or instance family at least for like the next 3 years. So for prod, we like to buy 3-year ISP. So it's heavier on like the analysis side and making sure that we can actually make that purchase. And then I would say some of the other big opportunities in Splunk is like the shadow spend, like that isn't just, you don't see it immediately and it's not affecting like your current KPIs like coverage or utilization. An example of that was like our on-demand capacity reservations. So we had teams that particularly were developing like AI resources, and there was a low supply for the GPUs they required, like P4D instance types. And so they had on-demand capacity reservations to make sure that they could use those still and they didn't lose them. Now, the solution there was more of like a governance kind of operate solution where we partnered with them and asked if we could leverage our relationship with our TAM, our AWS TAM, to ensure that capacity is available. Would they trust us to remove the ODCRs? And they did. We ended up saving like $48,000 a month. I think those type of solution like areas for saving are pretty high. But then we also recently we've been building other reports to like what's not being used, like orphan volumes or old snapshots. But I think the most value, the biggest area for opportunity is still in like our rate optimization. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Another question. Does Splunk Cloud support focus format, cost data? Yeah. Sorry. Bad reading. Focus format, cost data.
Yeah, no, we're trying to move over to Curve 2.0. That's really up to the engineers. They need to, you have to reconfigure your curve for every payer that you have, and Splunk has multiple payers. So it's on the horizon for sure. Like right now, there isn't a big sense of urgency. Well, I think after this conference, I feel like focus is more important than ever. So we can like have a standard way of communicating across all of our CSPs, the same terminology. I think that would be a huge benefit. But right now, we're still on like curve 1.0. So at least for AWS, and we're moving into, like, we announced Azure general availability last year. So we're still like we're mostly mature in AWS, and then second in Azure, and we're like ramping up there as well. So, but yeah, we're not on focus yet, but we plan to be, I think, from like the next year.
So one other slide you had up there talked about your gross margin, your cloud gross margin.
Yeah.
With that program, what type of impacts have you had? You mentioned things like you're tracking migrations, other changes in the environment. Has that changed the way that you operate the cloud, or the way that you would do migrations now that you're tracking that margin?
Well, I'll give an example about like a new region expansion, and what it has done is helped, like when we have expanded Splunk Cloud to like new regions in AWS or Azure, we've used the cloud gross margin program to try and estimate what it would cost and track the actuals. And we had like a win we weren't expecting to see, because in that same quarter, we had recreated our regional expansion model, which our PMs and our finance team will use to estimate like what's our total ARR required to go into a new region. And then sales will take that, and we know this is how much we need to actually pull in a year to justify expanding to that region. We have released a new model that stated we need half the total ARR that the previous model required. And I don't know if anyone caught it, but when you're looking, I didn't call it out, I should have, but in that screenshot, it said, hey, you're estimated to spend like 60-something thousand a month for expansion. You're only spending like 32. So it helped validate that our new model was accurate in that sense. So that was a recent win. And then, there's you know, Splunk is always releasing new capabilities, and one of those is our Victoria experience, and we're in the process of like moving more Splunk stack customer stacks to the Victoria experience. And you know, we want to keep track of, and that the Victoria experience is essentially just an upgrade of the Splunk apps customers can use. It offers more customization, but there's some infra changes that need to happen with instance types, and then also Graviton upgrades. So we track those with CGM, and the great thing about it is it's through Slack. We have weekly notifications. So if your work stream is more than like 10% off, classifies it as a failing work stream. But we just partner with the work stream owners because we want everyone to win. So we're gonna, and the great thing about that is we don't have to wait for quarterly reports, and finance can update their projections almost on a weekly basis. If we see something that's in the forecast failing, we can communicate and make changes earlier than just waiting for that quarterly report. So that's the main value of CGM. And then also like some of the wins would be like the new region estimates, or like just kind of keeping track of the other big things happening. Yeah.
I still have more questions over here.
I want to give the audience a chance here too. Okay. So yeah, if you want to, anybody in the audience have a question?
Okay. One second.
Do you support cloud data platforms like Snowflake, Databricks?
I
mean, do you have measurement data characterizing, let's say, cost, response time, throughput, performance, usage of resources, CPU, I/O, memory, networks?
So that what's difficult about that for us is that it's just so many different accounts in Splunk, and each account owner needs to grant permissions, because you can leverage like a payer account to get all your current like cost data. But when you start looking at like resource data, like like memory or CPU utilization, now it's like you need CloudWatch metrics or something, and we have to build pipelines to each one of those accounts, establish IAM roles to make sure we can talk to those accounts. And it's something we want to do. It's really important for right sizing to kind of surface all of that on a single plane. But right now we're not. We do have like on our horizon some type of data warehouse, data lake that would be like a Snowflake or Databricks solution. So we can pull everything from all of our clouds into one platform. But no, right now we're not like streaming or ETLing any like resource utilization data. Something we want to though.
Can customer aggregate your data to show usage of resources and cost and performance by specific department or line of business or application?
A Splunk customer?
Yes.
I'm not sure. So from like a FinOps perspective, I don't know. I don't have the insight into how like the customer can leverage like.
They would like to know cost by department or by application.
Now you're referring to David's customers, as in
yes. I'm talking about your customers. So people who use Splunk, they would like to characterize.
So like an external customer, then.
Yes, exactly what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
we would like to access your information, but not just CPU utilization or cost, but cost and CPU utilization, performance by line of business, by sales, marketing, or by specific team. Is it possible?
It really, I think it's a bit outside of my wheelhouse, but I'll take a step because I think that the Splunk customer, they're going to have an instance of Splunk running on their resources. They're not in how they use that instance of Splunk to query data related to their different BUs. I'm not 100% sure of our capabilities in that regard, but internally for like a FinOps stakeholder, we do eventually want to ETL all of that resource type of data into like a single warehouse so that we can start making those right sizing recommendations. We can start having more conversations, like even like power scheduling or something like that. Sorry if I couldn't answer. Yeah.
I thought I saw another hand up. Did I see?
No, that's another.
Okay. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Do you support agentic AI, information about RAG, vector store, LLM environment?
Our AI teams are really active. And there are some products on the roadmap for AI agents, like Splunk AI agents that can help you look and find insights like very fast, because that's our competitive advantage, right? It's like we allow you to take data from any source, put it into a single platform, normalize it, and find insights faster. But yeah, we are developing like AI capabilities. I know some of that is publicly available about how we're going to use AI. So if you like, I can connect with you after. Yeah. Yep.
Can I ask a Flexera question instead? Is that okay? Or
sure.
Oh, okay. So we were just talking about gamification, right? And I think the reporting tool plays a significant role. So what kind of capabilities Flexera has if that gamification is needed, or you want to implement gamification to some motivation to optimize costs?
Yeah, so what Flexera has is we've got all the cloud data. We've got all the business data as well, so we can layer that on there. We can tell you who's using the cost. From there, we can create dashboards to show, which departments, which projects, if you want to get down to the engineers, which engineers are using the most, which ones have the best savings, which ones have the most on-demand versus reserved capacity. So there's lots of different ways that we can gamify and show a kind of a leaderboard of who's using what, who's doing the best in the environment, just using our dashboarding.
Okay. But very quick and simple question. Do we have Slack notifications inbuilt in Flexera?
Yeah, we can do Slack notifications,
okay.
Teams notifications.
Okay.
I think you're giving good ideas here, David. Anybody else have a question they want to raise a hand for? Otherwise, hold on.
They talked about.
Quick question from a fellow blue shirt. Can you expand a little bit on like the importance of the speed to resolution that you guys have created internally within Splunk, like the impact of looking at some of your spend on a weekly basis, kind of things that you've seen to improve that?
Yeah. Actually, that's a great question because partially because I never mentioned the cadence. We send the reports on a monthly basis. And what it has resulted in is teams spotting anomalies where a microservice was scheduled to be deprecated and wasn't, and they're still seeing that spend. It did result in a behavior pattern where teams are just more responsive. They're tagging their colleagues in it. They're, leaving emojis on the Slack notifications like this is on fire, and it's starting to create a bit of a culture where their habit and their behavior is to go check this Slack notification each month. And then if it causes concern, they drill down by visiting the Flexera dashboard. They spot the issue, and then typically they'll contact our team or they'll report the savings themselves, and we celebrate the win. So we'll elevate the savings. But to answer your question, I think what it's done is resulted in they have a culture change with how our stakeholders are looking at cost, and it's very related to what they're doing, and it's very personal at that level. But yeah, some of the results that we've seen would be, at least we've had this service has been employed now for maybe 7 months, and I want to say at least 5 to 10 instances of teams spotting spend that shouldn't have been there and them taking some type of corrective action. So it's had a pretty good impact in that regard. Yeah.
Please connect with our guys on LinkedIn, and you can find them by their name or their QR code right here. And thank you so much for being here with us. We learned a lot. Colin, thank you for being up there moderating.